and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome to the Exploring Death podcast. I'm Lisa Jones, your host, and today I have with me Mark Pitstick. Mark is an author, counselor with a master's in clinical psychology, holistic chiropractic physician, frequent media guest, and a workshop webinar teacher. He attended theology school, majoring in pastoral counseling, and trained in suicide prevention. Mark directs the SoulPhone Foundation, founded Greater Reality Living Groups, and is a research assistant for the SoulPhone Project. His mission is to help you know and show that no matter what is happening to you or around you, your earthly experience is a totally safe, meaningful, and magnificent adventure amidst forever. I am thrilled to have you here, Mark. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the show, Lisa.
Yes. Well, I am intrigued. I want to hear all about the SoulPhone, but really my first question to you is, how did you get involved in this whole idea of connecting with the other side?
Mm-hmm. Well, how far back do we go? When I was 6 years old, my parents showed me a beautiful sunset, and I told them it reminded me of God. And they only told me that 20-some years later when I was in theology school. We were Lutherans, so it was always God the Father, this and that. So there's really no reason I would equate a beautiful sunset with the divine unless perhaps I had some reminiscence of it. In my early years, I was different. I actually had to learn human ways and how to act normal. And as soon as I learned about things like meditation and yoga, I took to them like a duck to water. But when I was 19, I started working in hospitals part-time as a respiratory therapist, and soon was trained to do cardiopulmonary resuscitation and was involved in codes just about every shift. So I was around many, many people who died, and seeing that, especially little children, made me search for meaningful answers to life's biggest questions. Really, who are we and why are we here? What happens after we die? Is there really a God, etc.? So that's why I embarked then on the holistic healthcare path you mentioned, theology school, clinical psych, etc., to find out for myself, because I just wanted to know. I read a book by Robert DeRopp, The Master Game. And I said, well, what's the nature of this game we're playing? What are the rules? I wanted to know. And if this is all there is, then fine. So then fast forward many years and wrote books and did radio shows and speaking around the country and so on, and met Gary Schwartz. He was the chairperson for the group Eternia, which was started by Eben Alexander and John Audette. Eternia.org is their site. I was a VP, and Gary and I really hit it off, and he asked me to become his spokesperson then for the SoulPhone Project. He's a serious scientist. He's describing himself as knee-deep in the weeds of research. And so it's my job to share the great news that has come from his research at the University of Arizona.
Fantastic. So great. That leads us right into the SoulPhone. And what is it? And tell us all about it.
Well, first of all, your listeners would like to know probably Dr. Schwartz is a serious scientist, graduate of Harvard with a PhD, and was a Harvard professor, was a tenured Yale professor, and then 20 years ago went to University of Arizona because it's a less conservative institution, and he had leeway to study what he was drawn to at that time, which was the question of consciousness survival. Is there really life after death or not? He started addressing that question by studying mediums. He knew from experience that some seemed to have verifiable abilities, but others were mediocre and others seemed to be outright frauds. So he designed an amazing series of experiments with some of the top mediums in the country using double-blind, triple-blind methods. He had other scientists, magicians, videographers, skeptics observe, and no one could find any flaws in his methodology. And he describes all this in this book, The Afterlife Experiments. So the bottom line was that he found about 20 mediums who indeed had about a 90% success or hit rate. And so that was a clear indication that indeed something continues, some information. He calls it info energy systems. Would be one way to describe, there's people say the Akashic record, the A field, the 0 point field, the field of all possibilities, God, whatever term people are comfortable with. So next then, these mediums, some of whom became colleagues and friends, started feeding him information from various, quote, deceased luminaries, scientists and inventors, people like Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla and others. And they were feeding him the same information independently, saying, Gary, we think you ought to work on scientific technology to allow a greater quality of information exchange from those who have changed worlds. So he did, with their help, with his prodigious mind. He's had 2 near-death experiences himself, and I think that might have opened his control valve a little bit. You understand that 95% of what the central nervous system does is inhibitory. It filters out what is there so we can function. Because he is a certifiable genius, he is just amazed at everything. We were talking about Ram Dass earlier, and he told about Aldous Huxley, how much fun it was hanging out with Aldous, because he was just blown away by everything, and it's true. That's the way enlightened people are. Well, also, Dr. Schwartz, being a senior professor at the University of Arizona, has the benefit of grad and post-grad fellows, optical physicists, electrical engineers, software programmers, and so on, the brightest of the bright, some of them from China and India, just amazing intellects. And so between all that information, again, from what is known as the A-team, these post-material are a term for those who have passed on, luminaries, about 30 of them. However, sidebar, we are told that there are hundreds more waiting in the wings, but right now we just can't handle that amount of information. They want to help us heal our world. So between all that, over the last 11 years then, he has perfected, well, I don't say perfected yet, but we have this. We can now say scientifically with 99.9% certainty that life does continue after bodily death, and at least some post-material persons can communicate with us. That's a huge statement. He has an article coming out in the journal Explore discussing that, and had 2 other journal articles. So he has met the scientific requirements for making these statements accurately and reliably. We are working on right now with a electronic switch to achieve a 99% reliable, accurate switch that gives instantaneous yes, no answers, because a switch is a binary system from these post-material persons. Well, when that's read in, it should be by the end of next year, depending on funding, we will then be able to have an assemblage of those switches and have a soul keyboard. If you look at a keyboard, those keys are just switches. If you push the K key, that's a yes for the K and a no for everything else. So then we're really able to tap into communicating with these luminaries via texting and typing, and then we should be off to the races with commercializable devices, income, and then the ability to create the next 2 devices, Soul Audio talking with, Soul Video like we're doing now.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. This is just amazing. And I love the fact that, with so many skeptics and people that are materialists that, have in the past not believed in any of this. I mean, the fact that there's this scientific proof and that, it's been able to be, I guess, using scientific methodologies proving this, that's just fantastic. Because I think that's one of the things for people that are skeptical or, excuse me, that just don't want to let their mind go. They think, oh, that's just magical thinking or whatever. This to me is just groundbreaking news.
It is truly. And we don't use the P word yet, actually, prove. We say strongly indicates, definitively demonstrates. You know, prove is actually a word that a scientist will never use because there's always a chance for, you know, that 1 in 1,000 chance, for example, this information is being created by alien tricksters, which we have no data to support that hypothesis. But that's why you leave just a little opening. But we have run many tests. For example, we have what's called the cognitive understanding test. You know, it's amazing how much information you can glean from yes, no answers. When I was a respiratory therapist, we did that with quadriplegic patients. Sometimes that's all they could do is blink their eyes. So yes for 1 blink, no for 2 blinks, whatever the system was. Well, likewise with these post-material persons, and let me do a quick sidebar because you mentioned materialists. There is a centuries-old philosophical debate between materialists who believe that all that exists is only what you can see with your 5 senses, and post-materialists who are looking at the contemporary evidence and know that our 5 senses, wonderful as they are, perceive much less than 1% of reality. Number one. Number two, the other term for us saying post-material instead of ghosts, dead people, spirits, whatever it is, those are also inaccurate. All the indications are that those who have passed on are or can be just as physical as we. At the same time, they can multilocate, which describes some apparent paradoxes in the past. That is, they can be in more than one place at the same time. They can appear physically to us when we're working with them in the lab, but they could be beings of energy in some other realm. All of these things simultaneously through some of the mediums in our meetings with them. And keep in mind, these are high-level people like Tesla, Edison, and Einstein. They said they can be in as many as 50 to 100 places at the same time having different interactions. What fun that's going to be. And then the last thing is Dr. Schwartz formed the Academy for Post-Material Sciences 2 years ago. aapsglobal.com is their website. And to date, about 200 scientists, university professors, and physicians who, as their working hypothesis, as their underlying premise, is that consciousness is primary, that it's not just a temporary byproduct of the human brain. So those are some reasons for post-material persons. And oh my gosh, where was I headed before I did my
I don't know. It's all good though. I think what you've just said is I mean, it was just perfect in, you know, furthering this conversation about just opening the mind and believing. Because to me, you know, people that are skeptical or whatever, I'm always like, well, yeah, but we used to believe the earth was flat, right? Until we had better information. And so to me, that's what this is, better information.
Right. It is. It's a whole new realm. And again, the research to support it. Not the research has been done in 3 different centers. It's been replicated. The sessions have been repeated thousands and thousands of times. So that's when you can make these very, very strong statements. So it's a whole new age, especially, you know, we're recording right now 2 days before Christmas. The holidays are tough when you've, quote, lost, but you really don't lose a loved one, whether it's a person or a pet. I've worked with many bereaved parents over the years, and you know, it's the toughest of the tough. So those are the 2 main, those are the 2 main goals of all this work. First of all, to reassure and comfort people that life is a totally safe, meaningful, and magnificent adventure amidst forever, which means we see our loved ones again. You know, when they pass, we can communicate with them now. As many near-death experiencers say, we each are one with the one and part of source right now, not maybe someday, you know, if we live or believe a certain way. So lots of good news from that. And then the second, again, being able to communicate with these post-material luminaries who can feed information. In one of our meetings, I asked a number of them, when we have the technology for bringing through a certain quantity of information, for example, the Soul Keyboard, would you be willing and able to do webinars on, fill in the blank, overpopulation, global sustainability, whatever, disease. And the medium involved started laughing. She said, they're pushing each other out of the way to get first in line. So that's how much they still care and want to help us. So it's immensely hopeful. I know that sometimes it's hard to have hope, and people have bad news and go through difficult, but there are lots of reasons to be hopeful now on both a personal and planetary level.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Well, it's so interesting to me because I had an out-of-body experience 15 years ago when my husband died. So it's classified as a shared death experience where I was able to travel to the other side and experience that unconditional love and the gathering of the souls and him being welcomed into the heavenly plane, that was, I think, was shown to me to give me comfort, because that was my belief. I believe, whatever anybody believes, they're going to be given what they need to be able to sustain them and help fulfill what, their belief system is. And so now here I am forgetting where I was going with that. Oh, I know. But when I came back, I just have this whole thing about death and it's not for real. And I'm here to shine light on death. And that's the whole reason of this podcast, Exploring Death, is to help people not suffer so much, because I know people that they lose a loved one and they just shut down. They just feel like life is over. They have nothing to live for, or they just want to be with their loved one on the other side. And yes, all of that, those feelings are valid, and I've felt them myself. And yet, like you said, it's an adventure to be here. And while we're here, let's have fun and explore and go further. So I'm so excited, because I think this SoulPhone is going to help so many people release this just terrifying grip that grief can really take over somebody's life and not allow them to fully live. So that's exciting.
I agree. You mentioned shared death experiences. I spent some time with William Peters, who's one of the pioneers of that work, along with Raymond Moody.
Yes.
And we consider that to be one of the categories of clinical evidence. And Dr. Schwartz and I wrote a book called Greater Reality Living, because we wanted to prepare people for the coming paradigm when a growing number of people know without a doubt, have that enlightenment moment, that there is more than meets the eye. And so near-death experiences, after-death communications, shared death experiences, and others collectively also have a very strong indication that life continues. And along with the scientific research and also people's firsthand experiences, which are immensely powerful, the least objective and amenable to research, but the most personally empowering, because when a person has it like yours, you know it's real. You don't need to see the statistics and research. So put all that together and the course is clear. And that's why we're helping with these Greater Reality Living groups you mentioned, to help as many people as possible learn the evidence. And we can talk more about the groups when you're ready.
Fantastic. Well, before we do that, I just wanted to pull some cards, because that's what I do, is I pull cards, and to me, it's direct information from the universe or source or angels or the beings of love and light, or whoever you want to believe them to be. But I do think that they're beings of, light and love. And so let's just see oh my gosh, I love it. The first card, I just can already tell how exciting this is. So the first card is always the blockage card, which is communication, right? So we're having a hard time communicating with people that have, as you call them, post-material persons. I love that, because I really hate the word death. I feel like it's got so much connotation around it, and it's such a limiting word, and there's so much, people are like, but post-material persons is great. So anyway, the blockage card is communication. So the action card is success. And that is exactly what you guys are doing. You guys are putting together a successful way to communicate. We're using the scientific methodologies and, recreating and having all of this proof for people. Again, you don't like the word proof, but the word, what words do you use again?
Yeah, definitive demonstrations, strong indications, etc.
Right. And for people that do receive messages from the other side that are, there's no feasible way that this person could have come up with it. It's so comforting. It's so, just energizing for them to know that their loved one is still available to them and communicating, so I love it. So success, that's what you're working on. And then the outcome card is adventure. And that is, to me, that's what this is all about. We're here for an adventure. We're here to expand ourselves and our consciousness, and truly at the end of the day, we're all one. And that's what we're here to do, is to experience that oneness. And by being able to communicate with these people on the other side, just wow, the opportunity to, like you said, heal the world and figure out how to move forward, instead of being kind of, right now I feel like we're in this really dark period, and by able to shining more light and figuring out how to move forward in a more positive way, I think is super exciting. So
sweet. A couple comments. First of all, the first card with the hands coming together is very much like the logo we almost used. One would be, of course, coming from another realm to ours and getting in touch with these post-material persons. The other thing, you used the word adventure, and that's really one of the biggest takeaways. Joseph Campbell did a wonderful job trying to educate us that we each truly are heroes and heroines. And when we understand that this time on earth is just a blink of an eye in the span of eternity, and based on Michael Newton's work, founder of Life Between Lives therapy, not even all our soul's energy or essence is here, maybe just 20, 30% of who we are. Also, when you consider that we are one with the one and part of source, we're eternal beings, put all that together and you're like, okay, I can handle anything, cancer, molestation, child passing, whatever. When you know that it's really a dream, again, Ram Dass, I've learned so much from him. He says so many wonderful stories. He was fond of saying, you know how you have a dream at night and it seems so real, but then you wake up and you realize you were just dreaming? He said, wait till you wake up from this one. And truly it is. And so when we remember that, who we are, why we're here, who walks beside us always, then life truly is an adventure. I just spent some time out on a Navajo reservation in northern Arizona, and the guide, we were asking him about, because we knew from our Native American friends that at least Eastern Native Americans had no word for the concept of fear. And they said, what is there to fear? Every day is a walk in the woods with great spirit, Wankataka. And I asked our Navajo guide, Cody, about it. He said, no, we have a word for fear. And I said, well, does it mean anything else? He said, yes, be brave and strong. And I said, wait a minute, are you saying that this thousands of year old language recognized that fear and be brave and strong are two sides of the same coin? He said, yeah, it's okay to be afraid, but you have a chance to become more brave and strong. You should do that. Wow, why doesn't our language capture things like that so that kids can learn it from the very beginning? So that's just one of the many great news we want to share with people, and you're certainly doing that. Thank you for it.
Wow, that is amazing. And again, I think it's so powerful to, like you said, two sides of the same coin. And I truly think our society, especially, I mean, I don't know about other societies other than our United States society. It's all about, there's this whole thing about fear around death. And like, we've kind of put death behind closed doors. And, when somebody dies, it's like they rush them out of the room and take them to mortuaries where you don't get to be with the body and just really have this closure. And then just the fear of death, and people don't want to talk about it and they're afraid of it. And so it's just, to me, it's so exciting to be able to have this conversation with you and to help people hear the good news that there is this preponderance of evidence of life after death, and that we can actually communicate with people. And I mean, truly, it's a game changer, and I'm thrilled to be able to bring this information to my listeners. So what else would you like to say before we wrap things up?
Well, first of all, you mentioned beings of light, whether they're called angels, guides, master teachers, whatever. And this actually will be future scientific research once we have the Soul Keyboard going and enter the commercializable stage. Dr. Schwartz wants to double back then and apply similar methods to then communicating with what we call evolved energies. But it'll be a totally different approach, because with humans, with people who were on Earth before, the whole trick has been to dampen down background noise, electromagnetic fields from fluorescent lights, 110 outlets, and so on, and increase their energy so we can detect their signal on a reliable basis. Well, with angels and other higher beings like that, they would blow up the equipment we have right now because it's so sophisticated and sensitive. So the goal there would be to have equipment that can handle the magnitude of that energy. So that will be super exciting. Well, what I would like to share is about these greater reality living groups. And people can visit our website, greaterrealityliving.com. We have groups we just started doing this. I think we have 10 now in 3 countries. And these are safe places where people can meet in an inclusive, non-judgmental place and enjoy the fruits of what we call the lives formula, as in all lives matter, and we have not one but many lives. And the L stands for learn the evidence. We mentioned earlier, scientific, clinical, and experiential. The I stands for internalize this great news, because we don't want people to have just a dry, superficial, intellectual knowing, but a deep internalized knowing that gets them through the day, especially when times are tough. The V stands for vitalize yourself holistically, because it's very difficult to know and show who you are if you're chronically ill, fatigued, depressed, anxious, as many people are now for good reasons. And I address all that in my book, Radiant Wellness. So we want people to be vitalized so they have enough vitality and energy to get through the day and brighten the corner where they are. The E in the lives formula stands for enjoy the many benefits, some of which we've mentioned. And finally, the S, serve others and make the world a better place. So I encourage your listeners to form a group in your area. We have a team of facilitator managers who assist the facilitators with everything worked out. So it's really easy. Meetings, the facilitators forum. And so we want to see these groups around so they can help people in the area, wrap their head around. Oh my God, a couple of years ago, Netflix had a movie, starred Robert Redford, and the premise was that the top scientist proved without a doubt that life continued after bodily death. And we were very excited to see it because it's such a parallel with what we're doing. Well, to our shock and disappointment, where they went with it is a lot of people around the world killed themselves immediately. We're like, could you take a darker, bleaker, more negative take on that? We want people to be prepared for this, and then how can they have a spiritually transformative experience like you had, and then awaken to who they are, do what they came here to do, and make this life on earth what is possible. The other thing I want to share before we go is a number of free resources on my website, soulproof.com. 54 articles, some of them 20-some pages on the most difficult topics people have asked over and over the years. When a child changes worlds, when the body of a loved one dies by suicide, when the body of a pet dies. And notice the cumbersome language I'm using. I don't say when a loved one dies, I say when the body of a loved one dies. It takes a little more work, but it's so important because there's such an important distinction there. And then also lots of free radio shows, interviews I did with Brian Weiss, Raymond Moody, Wayne Dyer, you name it, people in the conscious field, Michael Newton before he passed, and those can be listened to, and then free newsletters. So again, that's soulproof.com for those free resources, soulphone.org to learn more about the SoulPhone Project, and how people can become members for as little as $5 a month and support this project. And then finally, greaterrealityliving.com to learn more about the groups and start one in your area.
Fantastic. And I will for sure have all of those links down below on my website, and so people can easily find you. Wow. Mark, this has been fantastic. I think what you're doing, I mean, truly life-changing, changing the world for the better, and it's super exciting work. So thank you for your time.
My honor. Thank you for doing this, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.